hi, my little tiddly winklets. Today we will be talking about... Shut up. Today we will be talking about what vocal snippity snips. And let's dive right in. Thank you to my Instagram friends who asked me this when I asked on my story what to do my next video on. And if you want to have a say on my videos, you better follow me on Instagram and Michael Watson. And let's go. Okay. I, because I'm just such an amazing person, have sung for you with my amazing voice. And I've made you some little vocal sections that you can snip up and make your own snippity snips. Yeah. All right. So simpler. Let's go Command Shift T to create a new MIDI track. And then we go get a simpler from our browser over here. And then take a simpler, drag it in. And this is literally it's as simple as taking some vocal, and these vocals, if you're on my mailing list, this will be in your inbox. So I've given this all to you. If you want to sign up, you can. All the links are in the description. Just take any vocal, doesn't have to be mine. Pull it into your simpler, then hit slice mode, and then you can see all these little slices. Now, if you have a MIDI keyboard, or even if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, make sure this little keyboard is on, and then your actual computer keyboard becomes a MIDI keyboard. You can see that it's snipped this up into little sections. Now you can leave it as it is and just start making your own little vocal choppy melody. Or you can double click on one of these markers to make it go away, or you can change it so that you can change the chop to have it your way. Alright, I hope that answers your question, Nikhil. Literally drag in the thingy, drag in the vocal, hit slice, and then you've got this. Now to make it even better, I don't like working in the simpler like this because I have very limited control. I want to be able to control every single little chop and make it amazing. So you can right click inside your simpler and go slice to drum rack, and that track that just had the simpler on now has a drum rack, and it's a drum rack with your little vocal choppity chops on. And the cool thing about this, vocal snippity snips, that's what we're calling them today. The cool thing about this is that you can take effects like reverb, let's just be boring, and put it on that specific drum pad. And now this has reverb on it, but the others don't. So you really can control each individual little snip. What I've done in some of my projects, instead of even creating a drum rack, I've literally like manually made little vocal chops and then used them, like moved them around and created a melody like this and transposed whichever ones I wanted and so forth. So you could do that, or you could, on your track with a drum rack, create a MIDI section, Command Shift M, and then, draw in with your pen and create a vocal chop line. Then also this drum rack, you're not limited to what's in this drum rack. You can drag in other samples. What I usually do is I end up with a really big drum rack full of samples all over the place, and then I delete a bunch. Like, I really make sure only cool samples are left in my drum rack because I don't want to deal with crap. This stuff takes a long time, so every time I've worked with vocal chops, I've really put effort into it. I have a little clip that I had to record on my phone because my screen record on my Windows machine wasn't working, and I tried for hours to fix it, but it'll give you an idea of my latest production that has used vocal chops and how I did that. Okay, I've been trying for hours, I'm not exaggerating, to get my screen record to work, but it ain't working, so just to show you an example of vocal chops. So here you can see my drum rack with all my different chops, and each chop I kind of edited, and you can see they all have different transpositions and things like that. Fades, I really worked on each individual one, and also making sure it's on one shot gates so that it only plays as long as the MIDI note. Otherwise the MIDI note could be super short and it would play the whole length of the sample. But I want it only to play as long as the MIDI note is. So that's why we do trigger gate. Sorry, that's why we do one-shot gate. And then yeah, just a bunch of processing, and this will be different depending on the kind of sound you want and the backing of the vocals. So there's a lot going on, and I wanted the vocal samples to have a specific sound. And then another thing I wanted to say is also there's a lot of layering going on. There's that kind of octave lower vibe. And yeah, just a lot of vocal layers. So it's not often as simple as just taking like one drum rack that you've made with vocal chops and making a melody. Although you can do that, but I find if you really want your vocal chops to be a feature and something interesting, you need to treat it as a sound design exercise and really work on each chop. This stuff takes hours to do well, like hours. Okay, so just some other tips as well. Nowadays, the vocal chops are like being a bit overdone, kind of like what you just heard in my song that I just played on my iPhone. But one thing that's kind of people are doing more and more, and my little vocal sample pack, I guess, would work quite well for this, is people take vocals and like merge them and make new vocal lines. So actually, I think I actually made one earlier. Here we go. So I've taken different pieces of vocal melody and created a whole new melody with crossfades. And then if this were a whole piece, I would use that. Instead of a vocal chop, I'd have like a flowy ambient vocal line with some little, details in between. So one thing I would do is I'd probably copy this over and then another thing you could do is take this vocal and run it through a vocoder. So how you do that, I've got a video on that. I've also got another vocal chop video, which talks about choke groups, which I think I mentioned in my little iPhone video. Okay, so vocoder works better if you have actual words, so that it can set the formants can shape the synth sound. But another thing you can do is you can make new melodies or put it through a vocoder and then chop that up and add that to your vocal samples, or even layer it with your vocal samples so that you've still got one layer of like human vocals and another layer of more electronic vocals, and just to give it a really interesting sound. And then another tip I have is when you make a vocal chop drum rack, add some non-vocal elements to your drum rack. I've got a couple vocal chops here. That I was working on earlier, and to make things a bit more interesting, and I did the same with the piece that I showed you on my smartphone, is I had some non-lead vocals in there. I think I had some harmony vocals that I turned into chops just to give the vocal chop line something interesting. But one thing you could do is add some synths, like, I don't know, a piece of that maybe. Come on then. Make it a bit shorter. And in fact, just like duplicate it twice and transpose it to different pitches. And, use that among your vocal chops, and just like in that way, don't only worry about the pitch of your vocal chop melody, but also add some interesting effects. I didn't make a vocal chop melody here. I did show you one in my previous thing. But basically, you just start drawing. Like, if you have a harmony already or a melody, you can use that as inspiration to help you create a vocal chop kind of melody. But if you don't have one, just do something random and see what it sounds like. So that sounds terrible, and one of the reasons it sounds terrible is that these things are too far apart. So, you slowly improve your work. See, I like this. I think that's quite interesting, so I'm going to keep that. Maybe I'll duplicate it and use it later again. And in this way... In this way, you slowly begin to create an interesting, catchy line. And then of course, when you're creating your drums and stuff like that, a great thing to do would be to maybe have like, if you have a kick over here, you don't necessarily need a vocal chop. You could like, when you have a snare, you might want to have a break, and then you can have some vocal chops, and then, you know, you don't want everything playing all the time. Where's the rhythmic interest in that? If you know a little bit about counterpoint, you can also think about rhythmic counterpoint. So while the drums are doing their thing, you want the vocal chops to kind of be a response to the drums. Music is a conversation. And while you're writing melodies, you know, you have a melody and a counter melody. They talk to each other. You can also have rhythms that are talking and interacting with each other. And it's this kind of detail that really changes a song from kind of average to great. You know, anyone can literally just lay down a bunch of chords with no rhythm and lay down a melody on top. But if you start making the chords interact with the melody and the melody interact with the drums and so forth, you're really beginning to compose something cool. Anyway, that's a different video. That's a lifetime worth of videos of composition series. If you guys are interested in that kind of stuff, let me know. That's really my real passion is composing, but this channel has been really electronic based. But anyway, so that's vocal chops. I hope I've given you some like insight. Again, in terms of choosing these vocal chops, my approach has always been very integrative. Cool, ramble over. Biggest tip is also just to have fun and experiment. So, for instance, in this drum rack, I may have my sample, but you know what, maybe I want to stretch it. Like, why not? Let's make it long. And, you know, maybe I just want the whoa parts. So then you can shorten the length of your drum pad. You know, it really becomes a thing of sound designing and messing around with everything. Have fun with my vocal chops. Please, like I share my knowledge with you, please share this video with people you know or a group that might benefit from it. I'll see you guys soon in the next one.